Okay, great. So we're going to go ahead and start finishing our menu up top here. This is where we're starting today. This is coming from step 101. And what we did in the previous step is we actually created our top layer, our level of our navigation. And we are headed to the end game. Is to have our navigation and completely CSS based, and to put those sub layers in. So where we are currently, we have step 100, step 101, and step 101. Where we should be starting is with our CSS folder, with a footer CSS, a header resize CSS, style CSS with no styles in it, a data folder inside our assets folder. Inside that we should have our JSON, our menu data. In our step we're working on now, we'll actually be going after these submenus that are showing up underneath here. And in our JS, we should have our app.js, and inside of there, we should have our function init, and then our window function to add that event listener for scrolling to resize the top. We should have our Ajax that we created in step 101, and that's still inside the window init function. And then we should actually have our window onload, which calls the init function. Header resize should be inside there, and in our index.html file. We should have previously, in the last step, we actually updated our jQuery from the slim version to the full version, and we added our app.js script, as well as got rid of the script in the header. And so this is where we'll be starting. And so our first step of 102 is to create our 102 folder. So we're going to close all of our files, and we're going to right click, and for those of you who like to do it this way, edit, duplicate, or if you would like, you can, in Dreamweaver, you can just highlight it and hit Control D. Control D will make a copy of 101. We're going to rename it 102. And the first thing that we're going to do, we're not going to update, by the way. We are not going to update our files. Don't let it do it. It'll change all the relative paths and cause a world of problems for us. So we're not going to update. And now that we created our 102 folder, first thing we want to do is make sure that we're starting off with a good code. So we're going to go out to our browser. We're going to change our link from 101 to 102, peek inside that new folder, and make sure that everything is working. Header resizes. We have our 4 links at the top that were drawn dynamically, and we are ready to go. Okay, so now we're ready to get going. Let's go ahead and turn our inspector on in our browser so we can keep an eye on things, watch for errors or anything like that. Let's shrink it down a little bit, and let's go ahead and move over to our code. And the first thing we want to do in our code is there is an issue with our JSON. So and what that issue is if I collapse these menus, if I collapse the submenus down to challenges, you'll see that we actually have I tucked in here where we did not want that to be. And the easiest way to fix that is, actually the easiest way is to go ahead and highlight our 2 submenus. You can see they open, close, and Control X, cut them right out of there. Because what we want to do is make sure that we clearly can grab that I menu and delete it out. When we delete that out, we can paste back in our I menu, and at this point, we should be able to look at it, and it should be in good shape. and it is in good shape. We're in great shape. So what we did again, just one more time for you, is we highlighted the submenus behind me and ahead of me, and we cut them out, and that left us with the I menu. And so then we went ahead and we highlighted that and we deleted that, backspaced it, which put us with the opening and closing for an array, and we pasted back in our code in there. And so now we're good to go, and we're going to hit save, and let's close that window. And let's just make sure nothing blew up on us. Best way to do that, clear empty cache, take a look. We look good. All's well there. So with everything good there, no errors in our console, we can go ahead and move on to our next step. So with our next step, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and get the styles that we used, that we created in Web 100, bring them in, because we're going to be creating submenus. And we want that CSS to take over the menu so that it looks well. Where we're going to do that is we're going to go into our assignment, not the lesson, the assignment. And in the assignment, we have assignment resources. Below that, we have the style sheet that we're looking for. So I clicked it and I downloaded it. I'm going to show it in the folder. And I'm going to extract all. And there is my style sheet. So what I'll do with this is I actually will take this, drag it over top of my CSS folder, and drop it. It's going to ask me if I would like to replace it. I'll say yes, and OK. The next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and pull it into our site as well. We haven't pulled that sheet in because there's been nothing there. And so we're going to go ahead and add that in right after all the other styles, because we want this one to override if there's any matching style declarations or rules. We want that to overwrite anything. The way that style sheets load, this will ensure that our styles, these styles, come last. Let's go ahead and update our comment on top of that style as well. Application styles used for the entire site / application. We'll go ahead and put that comment in there as well. Now that we have that in, let's go out and see, let's close any folders that we have open from bringing that down to get rid of any extra crap. And we'll go back out, we'll clear cache, empty cache, and we have nothing. We forgot one step, so we need to go back and take care of that. What that step is we need to go down here in the nav and put the ID in so that the styles will apply. It doesn't help to have styles if you're not aligning them to the element that you want them to go. So I'm opening up the style sheets, I'm copying the ID, primary nav wrap. I'm just going to close my style sheet again. I've started putting the ID in there, so I'm just going to put it in there. I'm going to hit save, and hopefully that takes care of our problem. So we'll clear empty cache, and there we go. Now we actually have our styles. That'll get cleaned up more as we move along. So the first thing, to recognize why these styles are looking a little wonky, what we want to do is we want to go over to our code, and inside our app.js, let's go ahead and update the Ajax function. We have to append to nav, right? Let's go ahead and make these LIs right away. Close it, save it, and let's go take a look. And so what's happening right now is it's updating these as list items, but the problem is that we have no list. We have not declared a list. So the first thing that we want to do now that we made these list items is in here we have a for each function, and we know that that's going to add each list item. And outside of that list function, what we want to do is start building a list. Let's go ahead and get rid of our console logs for now inside the success. Let's get rid of this as well. The less we have to look at, the easier it is to get this. We're coming in, we're saying if success, then process the data, send the data inside here. If data menu length is longer than 0, is more than 0, then do what's inside here. What's inside here is, it says, make sure your semicolon's on there. It says data menu, so data menu for each, right, and loop through each one of those items. We went ahead and we updated and told it to be an LI. But the problem is that it displays funky because we're putting LIs without any UL or OL or anything to define the fact that it's a list. So the first thing that we have to do is, if we're going to build a menu, let's go ahead and create a variable, and let's call that variable the menu. And let's say that the menu is going to just go ahead and start with an unordered list. So at this point, we're starting to build a menu. And we could just tell it to go append it to the nav and append it to the nav. But what we want to do is actually just start building this inside here. And we want to be able to close that as well. And so there's many ways we can do this. The easiest way is to actually take that and say the menu plus the closing. And also in here, we can take away assigning it to an element, and we can say, so what'll happen here is we come in, we say create a variable called the menu, put the UL, the unordered list, start building an unordered list. For each item, add an LI. So the menu equals the menu plus an LI. So at this point, what would happen is the menu would be UL plus that that LI, and then the next loop it would be UL, the LI that was put on it plus another LI, and then we come down here after it's done doing the for each, and we say take that menu, the menu, and close that list. And at this point is when we want to say, go ahead, and we could put it to the nav or we could put it to the primary nav. And at this point, what we want to do is we want to go back and we want to look at our nav, which is primary nav wrap. And we want to make that specific to that. So what we do is we call out, we say we're going to use an ID instead of an element, and we want you to .html, and then we can tell it the menu, put the menu in there. And so now if we save it and we go out and we take a look, empty cache, we now have our menu. It's now a list. It's now aligned with the CSS. It now looks good, and we're ready to start building our submenu. So at this point, we're going back to our JavaScript, and now we're starting to take on quite a few things. And one of the things that we want to do before anything else is, at this point, we're getting into building a menu. code that could be reusable. There's a little more to it. We're going to need to be able to build a menu and then build a menu again and build a menu inside a menu. And our best approach to this will be to go ahead and take all of this code that we have put in here and put it into a function. So we're going to come down here below and we're going to actually create a new function. And we're going to call it menuBuilder. And so we've just declared a JavaScript function. And what we want to do with this function is we want to take what we're doing up here and put it inside of it. And so the best way that we could do that is we could actually come up here and grab this code that we've put inside the success function and cut it out. And so now we have nothing inside there, and we're going to take what we cut out and we're actually going to paste it right inside of this function. In doing that, we can still leverage the exact same code that we got, but there's a couple things that we have to do. The first thing that we have to do is we have to go ahead and we got to take this function name, menuBuilder, and we've got to call it inside the success. The next thing that we want to do is we want to pass it the data. And while we're at it, instead of limiting this to specifically menu, right now we're calling data.menu down here. What we want to do is actually just pass it the data.menu. So that portion of that JSON that goes down there. And of course, this is our argument, and our parameter is right here. And so what we'll put for our parameter is we're just going to call it obj for object, because we're bringing in an object. We could name it whatever we wanted to. In this case, we're just going to name it obj. And anywhere that we have data.menu down here, we can now just say object. Object. Because it's bringing in exactly what we were working with up there. It is now bringing it in down here. And so if we have everything correct and we hit save, we're now just calling the same code that was in the success function inside here. We moved it into its own function, and we're going to just call it and pass that data to it. And so if we hit save and we go out and we take a look and we clear cache, we end up with exactly the same thing. So one thing we could do at this point is go ahead and clean up our code by applying source formatting. And that goes ahead and cleans it up for us. And we'll save it and we'll test it again to make sure that it's working well, which it is. And then we want to do a little more work down here. What we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is we're actually just going to move this out here. And the reason we're moving it out here is now we're inside this menuBuilder, and we really want to make sure that we start with an empty string and we call the menu and say that it's empty. And then essentially what we're going to do is do exactly what we did with this, right? We're going to, if the menu is longer than 0, if it's more than 0, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to start building our menu. So we're saying, right, take the menu and start the menu equals the menu plus UL. And the reason that we're doing this is because we're actually going to call this function again from inside itself when we have a submenu to build. So we've started building the menu. We're saying for each item, we want you to make a link, a list item. Additionally, we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove this and replace it with a pound sign because we don't want that link to go anywhere. We're actually going to worry about capturing that link at a later point and taking care of it. The other thing that we want to do is the fact that we have submenus. We know that item menu name, then we have item menu link. Let's open it up and take a look. We have item menu name, item menu link, and then we have menus. And some of those menus even have menus themselves. And what's cool is we can use something called recursion. And the reason that we can use recursion is because basically when we look at one of those submenus, we want it to build a menu again inside the menu. And the way that we do this is we actually come in here and we say if, so we're putting in an if conditional statement, item, because we're working on the item inside the for each now at this point, dot menus, because we know it's menus, dot length is greater than 0. Then let's do this. What's inside here? And this is the part that gets a little difficult to wrap your head around, because what we're going to say is we're going to say the menu equals the menu plus, and then we're going to call the function, or the function that we're already inside of, and pass it items dot menus. And because we're doing that, we know that in order to create a list inside a list, we actually open the list item and then tuck another list inside of it before closing it. And so because we're potentially going to build another list here, what we want to do is we want to say the menu equals the menu plus, and we'll close our list there. And so at this point, if we did everything right, what we should end up with is our menu. Cache, and I got errors everywhere. And what my error is looking like is it's on line 54, and it's saying, let's open this up more so we can read it. Let's get rid of this. Ugh. Let's close this junk. It's saying that I have an error on line 54, item menus, and it's saying uncaught reference error, items is not defined. So if we come over and we look, what we can see is that I have a typo, a spelling error. So if I get rid of the S in items and I come back and I refresh, we now have somewhat of a list. So what happened is we are just about there, but we left out one important step. When we're building the menu with the function, what we have to do is we actually have to return the results of the function to the calling method right up here where we are calling the menu builder. What we need to do is populate the menu builder populate a variable that can capture what's returned from the menuBuilder function. Because basically the function builds everything, and then with the return, as we'll see, it sends it back, and then we get the complete menu and not portions of it. What we were getting is portions of the menu. And so this return statement, it waits until the menu is completely built, and then it returns the menu variable, which nests the items inside, and we end up with our desired result. So it's really important to understand how we return a value. Great, so let's go ahead and do a quick review of what we've done to make our menu appear, and it's working great. And we're actually, the next step we're going to do is add event listeners to actually capture what happens when we click on these menu items. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at what we did in this lesson. I want to go back, and we'll go ahead and we'll start with the index.html. What we did do in this lesson for the index.html is we added in the styles so that we could pull in the styles for our navigation, and we also updated our nav element to have an ID, a primary nav wrap. After that, from there, we went in and we did make some adjustments to our JSON file. We updated the challenges portion of it, and what we did is we had an extra I submenu in here, and we took that out and got rid of that. So that allowed us to have our menu right. Then also we took our empty style CSS and we went ahead and we pasted in a bunch of styles just to control our navigation and our links. From there, we went to do the majority of our work we did inside the app.js file. And in the app.js file, we pulled out of our success function in our Ajax call the work that it was doing, and we put it into its own function called a menuBuilder. And up in the Ajax method, we basically called the menuBuilder function, passed in the object, the data object, menu object, and we captured the results of that into our menu variable, and then we went ahead and populated our nav element with the results of that. In our menuBuilder, we had to move some things around and build out our menu in a more strategic way so that we could actually establish a menu and then capture the elements inside it, as well as the submenu elements by just calling the same function that we were inside of. For some people, that's a difficult one to wrap your head around, and we'll continue to talk about this in future lessons and classes, so don't worry if you don't fully comprehend. But basically, if you think about it, every time you call the menuBuilder function, it just builds a small menu, and it doesn't go any deeper than the level that you pass it. By doing this, it allows us to go inside deeper into it and actually grab the submenus and build them and tuck them inside of our menu that we're returning to our function call. So with that wraps up this lesson, and next time we'll move on to adding some functionality to our links.